Hey, what's up, guys? It's Reed Young for TransformPoker.com, and today we're going to be taking a little bit of a different approach to videos, and we're going to be talking about moving up through limits. So, a pretty different subject here. I've found that there's a lot of pretty common complications that come with moving up, and emotionally, it can actually be pretty difficult on a poker player to move up because you're facing bigger numbers, bigger risks, most of the time bigger variance because you're against tougher competition, and your win rate is going to be smaller on average. So let's take a look at this poster's questions and use them as a guide to kind of talk about moving through limits. So the poster says, I have a hard time to move up. On 25 no limit, he autopilots and feels good about it, and pre-flop he's making some money. So yeah, that's good news for 25 no limit. Definitely some pre-flop holes you can exploit in people's understanding of their pre-flop game, and so there's a lot to be done there. That's good that he's on top of it. He says when he moves up, there's so many more regs, and if he plays his decent game, he's uncomfortable all the time. He gets put in pretty tough decisions, and he feels like he can't really continuation bet as a bluff as often, and he gets confused a little bit post flop, it looks like. Higher limits, he gets called in position more by hands that beat him. It looks like in general he's just not used to people playing as good as he is. So that's pretty common. Right when you move up, there's a big point of friction depending on what your win rate is at the limit below. So if you move up as kind of a 4 big blind winner at a limit below and the buy-in doubles, you should roughly expect your win rate to about halve. So that means you're effectively making about the same amount of money. There's just a little bit more variance. And now that's kind of a general rule, but I've definitely found that it's the case. Really, I would say buy-in to the game is proportionate to skill level. That makes sense. Otherwise, everyone would just play whatever buy-in is kind of disproportionate to the skill. Eventually, there's an equilibrium that gets reached if fish gravitate toward a limit. I know for a long time, no one would really play 3-6 except for good regulars, and everyone either played 2-4 or 5-10 who was a weaker player because the kind of thought was that they enjoyed the rounder numbers that come from $2 and $4 bets or $5 and $10 bets. So 3-6 was largely missed, and because of that, it was a pretty tough limit and notorious for pretty high variance play. So you guys can maybe find spots like that on the site that you play, and treat your move through the limits as something that takes into account spots where fish may end up more often than not. All things being equal, though, eventually an equilibrium should be reached by the regulars, and as long as you're able to find those short-term exploitable sources of value, you should definitely hop on them. A lot of money in poker is definitely made that way. So not to get sidetracked too much, it seems like okay, he's having trouble with position. He's saying anything that can help. He's getting put in tough spots a lot. So okay, basically what happens is when you move up, people have a more nuanced understanding of the game than the level below. Like we said, buy-in level is roughly proportionate to skill level. And so while skill isn't necessarily something you can just go ahead and quantify it, like with a number, for instance, it's really going to have to do with a lot of these spots that you're used to exploiting um, the people at the lower stakes level, the lower stakes buy-in level. So for instance, say you usually play 1-2, and every time a button 3 bets and under the gun open, you're just cold 4 betting in the small blind, and you're just printing money. Likely the case. I mean, people just figure out how to 3 bet lightly in position, and they think that they're printing money, and then you turn it back on them with an explosively wide 4 bet that they're just frightened to shove over the top of as a bluff, or they just don't know enough about you to believe that you're bluffing, and so they just fold all of their bluffs. So you print money. Things like that happen at higher stakes. People are much more in tune with optimal frequencies, and not necessarily in the way that they've just done a ton of game theory study or something like that, but more so in the way that if they re-raise with jacks, they're just not folding it pre-flop with the understanding like, okay, this guy's probably a good player. He bought in full stack. Like, who knows what he's doing? I'm not sure, but on average, if I move all in with jacks here and I just don't know the player, I'm probably going to at least break even. So you can't really exploit by default a better player because they're playing closer to what's in line with the optimal. Of course, if you pick up that they're playing exploitively, then you can counter exploit it. All that's great stuff, but that also has to do with being more skilled than your competition. Essentially, being able to outguess them means you're more skilled. So when you move up, you don't have as easy of a time outguessing people, and that's where you lose a lot of your money. So you feel like you're put into some more difficult spots, more so than if you were at the lower limit where you were pretty comfortable in beating up on people. So yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions about moving up through the limits, let's get a good discussion going in the comments section. And if you guys want to, like and share this video with a good poker buddy of yours, and we can make that discussion even better. So I'll see you guys next time. Take care.